Today we're taking a look at two new exciting products from Fujifilm, the 50mm 1.0 and the new X-S10, which is their brand new line of cameras with similar specs to the X-T4. Starting off with the X-S10, this is Fujifilm's brand new camera, kicking off a brand new line as well. It's a lightweight camera coming in at 465 grams and has the same processor and sensor as the X-T4 with a 26.1 megapixel X-Trans CMOS sensor. The physical design of the camera actually removes a lot of the retro design of the Fujifilm and really adds a modern feel to it with the brand new dials, which are unmarked, so that way you can customize them to your liking. It also has a flippy floppy screen, which is a 3-inch screen, and it has image stabilization in the body, which compensates up to 6 stops. Taking a closer look at the body, it does have the SD card next to the battery at the bottom, and the ports you have is a USB-C port, which you can also plug an adapter to headphones. You also have a HDMI, which is a micro HDMI port, and above that you have a mic input, which is actually out of the way of the screen, so you can plug it in and not worry about your screen hitting the mic. On the top of the camera, you have most of your controls, like the dial here. Next to that, you have a lever for your flash. You have your mode dial, another dial that you can customize, an ISO button, a Q button, a record button, and the on and off and shutter button. At the front, you have another dial just to change a whole bunch of settings. And at the back, you have a joystick, a menu and OK button, and a back display button. This camera does not have a wheel like we've seen on a lot of other cameras. At the top here, you have your trash can as well as your drive modes. You have a display button for playback. You have a button actually right next to the viewfinder, which you can customize just like all the other buttons and dials on the camera. You have an AEL button, an AF on button, and you do have a bigger grip compared to a lot of the other Fujifilm cameras as well. If you're a Fuji user, you'll be happy to know that the battery the camera uses is an NPW126S battery. One thing to note is that the viewfinder is slightly small. I would say it's similar to the X-T30. Now jumping over to stills, the camera has the full suite of film simulations, up to 18 film simulations inbuilt into the camera. You also have up to 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter and 8 frames with the mechanical shutter in the camera. The camera has two new modes, Auto and SP, which allow you to either select a scene or allow the camera to select the scene for you. And it will also increase blue when it feels like it needs to for, say, a great sky, or it will increase the clarity if you need a little bit more detail in bricks or different things in your shot. Finally, the camera still has great autofocus, not only in face detection, but also has eye detection as well. On top of the camera, you do have an effect which is filter, which allows you to get a little bit more creative and play around with the different miniature or toy camera effects built into the camera. You also have 4 different custom modes, which is really interesting. If you wanted to, for example, set one of the custom modes to just being manual focus, you can do that and the camera will remember all the settings you've changed. And then when you jump over to C3, it will swap back to, say, an autofocus setting or whatever you want it to be. One neat thing before we get into video is that it does have a webcam 2.0 feature, which allows you to use film simulations whilst you're using your camera as a webcam. Now jumping into video, the camera can shoot up to 4K 30 FPS at 420 and 8-bit inside the camera, but if you use an external recorder via the HDMI port, you're able to shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second, 422 10-bit. In the camera, you also can record up to 1080p in 240 frames per second, and it does have F-Log in the camera as well. Unfortunately, this camera does have a recording limit. However, it is a little bit longer than the X-T4. This camera does have a recording limit up to 30 minutes instead of the 20 minutes from the X-T4 in 4K. Finally, this camera is not weather sealed. However, something that is the new 50mm 1.0. It has a 77mm filter thread. It is weather sealed. It goes from an aperture of 1.0 all the way up to f16. It has a 9-rounded blade aperture with a super creamy bokeh. This lens is about equivalent of a 75mm in full frame, and it has a minimum focus distance of 70 centimeters. Finally, this lens has gotten so much buzz around it, not only that it's a 1.0 aperture, but it also has a really fast autofocus system in the lens. And testing it out, I can definitely attest it is very quick at autofocus, not only in photos, but also in videos as well. If you have any questions, make sure to comment them down below, or if you want to find out more information on not only the camera or the lens, we have links in the description as well. Finally, we have an Instagram, which we do frequent giveaways on there, so make sure to check that out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.